That's a valid answer. Anyone else? Yep. Mm-hmm. So that'll be correct. So, uh, let's see. I could send you guys this. I could send you this like basic, super basic brush in the chat. You guys can download it and we can make one, like together. Like, do you guys want to do that? All right. So, let's see. Export subtool. So I think it's always good to have a reference of like what the most basic brush is. And I think the most basic digital brush is just like the MS Paint like marker, like. And anyone who's used one will know that it feels like garbage to use, and there are some obvious reasons why it feels so bad. And I'll show you all the other parameters that will make it feel better. So right now, this brush, it stamps this shape, right? So you guys feel free to download this brush. This brush is pretty much the most basic brush you can get. So this is the shape, and then you can see the gap here. Gap, it just stamps it across like so. So before we get too complicated, I will show you guys. I'll pretty much go through every single category here and show you what's important. So obviously, one brush size. Starting with the first parameter you can adjust, and when you click this, you can bring up the big menu, and each one of these parameters influence how how it interacts. So the moment you put pen pressure, like you can see, I actually hate how this feels. Like it becomes like a really thin, like a nib, like a dip pen almost, and it's like quite hard to control. After that, tilt. I don't ever use tilt. I don't really know what it does, honestly. So if anyone has a better idea of what tilt does, but let me know. Velocity, pretty much as you speed up, it gets thinner. I feel like there's no way to, should be a way to flip it around, but I don't think there's a way now. So yeah, that's velocity. And lastly, random is one thing I really like about random, is that this is random. Random adds randomness to the size. And as we discussed before, if I show you, if I increase the gap, you'll see this is what it actually looks like, right? It's just stamping circles, and it's stamping them. When you turn on random, it stamps them in with size variation. And if you increase this random value, then there are less size variation. And when it's more condensed, it looks something like this. So you can see random actually adds a lot of interest to a brush. And lastly, before we go, a nuance with the pen pressure and with anything is that you don't want to crank it 100% in any direction. So at 0, like this minimum value is how small it can be. So at 0, it means your brush can either vary from 1 pixel to however many pixel you're telling it to be, or like 9, right, in this example. So it can literally be like literally nothing to like this. So unless you like that effect, like you can go for it, but I like to keep the minimum value somewhat reasonable. And this curve controls, like, I guess, like the rate of change. And you can actually you can inverse this curve, and you get, when you press down, it actually gets thinner. So yeah, so there are pretty much two types of curves for this. For Let me just write this down. Pen pressure curve type. So you have the exponential curve, which looks, let me see. Yeah. Exponential curve. And actually, I don't know what this curve is called. I guess you can call it a gradual or parabola or something like that. I don't know my math. There's also another one that's like this. I'm not too familiar with this, but these two. So you can exponential makes, like, what you're telling it to do is like emphasize. You have to press harder pretty much to make an effect. You see, like, I'm trying to press really hard right now, and it stays thin for most of it. So this brush is like a very hard nib. But the moment I turn it around like so, like tiny touches can change the size. So this is like a brush pen kind of feel. So if you guys want, you can take some time to try the two curves, see which one you like. And one tiny nuance you can do is the minimum value can be set here as well, pretty much. So if you set it like so, you set it like so, I think should work. Yep, pretty much. You can set the minimum value like here, and you can actually set the maximum value here to like clamp it. But that's for later when you want to get really specific. So that's setting one. We'll get through this a lot quicker for the later ones, but let me just hide. I'm gonna hide this gap so we make sure to go through everything like step by step. So for people that just joined, I posted a really basic brush in the chat. You guys can download that and make a brush alongside my demo. So hopefully that will give you a pretty good idea of how, just a good idea of all the parameters you can mess with. So the minimum value is how small it goes, okay? So it might be a bit confusing at first. So let me just turn off random. So right now my brush size set to 31. Oh, see ya, King. I have a recording, King, if you want it later, by the way. I'll put it in the notes. Pretty much. So look at this. Look how small it goes. But look how big it goes here. Like, that's, I feel like you don't need that variance. If I go to like 200, like, that is ridiculous. Like, I can still go to 1 pixel and go up to 200. Like, you don't need like that kind of range, right? So when you crank up the minimum value, it limits how small it can go. So now this makes a little more sense, right? Yes, pretty much. Yeah. So I think the minimum value, especially if you have like a marker kind of brush, like if you don't want like a G pen or like inking nib, like those, like you can maybe have a really high like variety. But the thing I don't like the most is like just how tiny it goes, and I like to. It's not good to press too hard on your with like a stylus, because like I feel like styluses are different from pencils. Like they respond differently, so you want to keep your touch as light as possible. So just minimum value just helps you do that. And especially if you want to use like an exponential curve, I think minimum value is super important to like to do that. Yeah, pretty much. Velocities, yeah. No, that's interesting, Gray. The tilt, like, I just never, I, I don't know how to trigger it. Like, yeah, it's an option here. See, if you're watching my stream, like tilt. Oh, never mind. Oh, yeah, yes. Yep. Yeah, yeah. I understand. So I can pull this up real quick. I use a Helion tablet. So digital pen. So you see, this is like, it's like the same thing, right? Same thing as this. But I'd say, I don't want to scare you or anything, but it's like big, medium, small all over again. So the biggest adjustment you can make is on your tablet software. So if you want to make your pen feel softer, like overall for every pen, then you can set the setting here. But I haven't changed the setting in a long time. After that, the next stage, if you want to change your pen some more, let's see, file preferences. You can set it in here as well. Let's see, tools, tablet. Gesture. It's somewhere in here. There should be a. It's outside, not in the preferences. Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. Pen pressure setting. Yeah, pen pressure setting. So this is my pen pressure setting here. So it's kind of like it's a little strange. I think there's also a way. Yeah, Close Studio has a way to set it for you. Like if you press, it'll adapt to your. I don't really know how they calculate that, but so this is like CSP pen pressure. And lastly, if you want to fine tune your brush, then you do it here in the individual brush settings. So that's like the hierarchy. Okay. So I would just experiment. Just experiment with what feels right and just go from there. And also I'll post all these charts like later. So don't worry about it. So with each one, I think I'm just gonna turn off everything in the previous one so I can keep things consistent. So this is huge. This is a huge section. Opacity. I'm actually gonna turn on opacity. I'm gonna jump ahead to and to density. So we're gonna work with. Just gonna turn off brush size real quick. And for opacity, if you guys are curious, you can change the this bar to the slider by clicking here, show indicator. or show slider. Some people like the bar better, some people like the other one better. Blending modes, it's a bit advanced, but we can cover that. Color mixing, I'll talk about that afterwards. So what is opacity? Opacity is, well, the how transparent your brushstroke is, right? So opacity. So notice what it looks like when two strokes overlap. Like it's got like a very obvious like overlap point. And same thing, you can add pen pressure to it. Looks something like this. You can add velocity, tilt, and randomness. And like you see, the moment I add all those effects, it feels a bit more natural, in my opinion. It's like it feels more fun to draw than with this one. So that's opacity in a broad overview. But brush density is like opacity's like relative, or like distantly related relative or cousin. And I like them better. So you see, in the brush density, the upper levels of brush density really doesn't change it much. So this is 73. This is 100. 73, 59. Like nothing's really different. But as soon as you get down to like 7 here, like you can see like 1, it kind of achieves the same result as opacity, like the lighter opacities. But when things overlap, like I think brush density, when it overlaps, it looks like quite a lot more natural, in my opinion. And what's really cool is that when you put pen pressure on brush density, it's like it makes a brush feel a lot more natural. Yeah. So if you want, I know all the anime painters have brush density on. Like that's kind of what it looks like. So if you make it like a super big brush, it's like low density, like so. Like you can see, you get some pretty satisfying results, right? But here's the thing. You might be thinking, oh, I can just do that with opacity, right? So if we do the same thing with like opacity, well, you see, not exactly the same thing. But what you could do is combine the two together, and now you get something like pretty cool. But for me personally, if I have a brush that has brush density on, I usually leave opacity alone, because when you start stacking too many things together, it gets too like unpredictable. So you can see with opacity, I like it because this is 100% opaque, and the fact is you can get to 100% like opaqueness with just the brush alone. You don't need multiple strokes, and even with relatively low density, you can actually still achieve 100% like opacity. But with the opacity setting, you always need multiple strokes to hit like full density. Yeah, I'm recording it. So this is kind of a high level overview of brush opacity versus density. I'm in team brush density, so pretty much any painterly brush you want to make, go with brush density. And for opacity is usually like if you want a brush to be even lighter, if you want the controls, if you want the parameters to make a brush even lighter, then you introduce opacity, and I would avoid mixing the two together. So but yeah, I remember when I first found out brush density, it was like game changing because it felt so much more natural. Kind of a trivia one to cover is the brush specific blush blending modes. So everyone knows about the blending modes here, right? Like everyone you guys probably use multiply for shadows, like screen for like light, like overlay is a pretty common one. But what about this? Like, they're the same thing. Why? Like, but like, why is this here? Like, how is this different from this? One second, I'm trying to remember. I gave a talk about this a while back. So let's do the normal thing, right? So I'm gonna do this and put this on multiply. See, when I do multiply on this layer, like it's a pretty standard reaction, right? Like if we're in a lab testing like stuff, then this reaction is expected. But what if I did this? In this first layer, I did this, and I hit multiply, right? So right now, this behavior is the same as the one we did previously. But watch this. If I go over it again, it darkened it a second time. If I try to do it here, see, if I try to do it here, since my brush is on multiply, it repeats the same behavior. If I go back to normal, it's like, then we don't get this second darkening kind of behavior. If we come back here, if I go normal, then I'm actually erasing over it. But going back to multiply, I can like keep darkening this to like infinity, actually. Same thing with overlay as well. So let's do 2 swatches like so. If I go overlay, and say I do a yellow. So overlay, as expected, it has no effect on the white because the data on the white can't be brought higher. I don't know what the exact like mask for like overlay is, but I think it's something to do with that. And nuance with overlay is that if the value is higher than 50, it brightens. So you can see, if the value is darker than 50, then it darkens. And if it's exactly at 50, it remains neutral. So same color. Yep. So that's the gist of overlay. Let's just do that. So one very useful tool, select layer, which is D for me. I just hit this and I just go right back to this layer. So we're going to do the same thing, but do overlay here. So first stroke, it's normal, right? I'm going to try this brighter yellow, but you see, when I try the brighter yellow, it's actually different now. If I do it again, it gets even brighter. Again, like it goes all the way to white. So that's pretty interesting. And if I go darker, you can actually like fry it like this, which is pretty cool. And I guess now I'm realizing you can actually use this effect in tandem here. If you double overlay, you can actually get some like, I think get some pretty cool stuff. I just realized this. So yeah, you can to pretty much summarize, not beat around the bush too much. The blending mode here is like local to this layer, and just think like every stroke you make with this means like you're making a new layer and like putting a stroke, but like that's for every stroke. That's why things are getting progressively darker or lighter. Sorry, you had a question? Yeah, pretty much, and it's more like spontaneous. Yeah, and you get some pretty unique reactions because most people are used to using normal layers, so this kind of workflow makes it more makes it more interesting with the reactions you get. Some other common ones. One really useful one's like replace alpha. We talked about opacity earlier. Like on normal, you see opacity like the opacity stacks on top of one another. But with replace alpha, let's say I go even lower. Like normally we'll do this. On replace alpha, it actually replaces it. And you might say, oh, that's just making gray, but no, it's actually transparent. So what replace alpha is doing is overriding the opacity underneath with the new value. So it's a pretty useful one. Overall, just experiment, see what's cool. That's how you yeah. I think color dodge is also a pretty cool one. This should like get blown out, but I don't know what it's doing. Overlay. Oh, nope. See, you can get pretty easy to get confused here. It's not getting blown out. It's interesting. The cool thing is you're very versatile because you're able to switch blending modes here, right? You can switch blending modes here, and you don't have to make a new layer every time you use a different blending mode. So you can even go like saturation, like desaturate this a little bit, like it's like super versatile. So that's that. Okay, I'm gonna have to just speed up a little bit. I don't think I'll cover color mixing right now. Anti-aliasing, if you're here for my last lecture, it controls the anti-aliasing settings, which I'll go over in a bit. This menu, I'll just click all these: thickness, angle, brush density. This is where you find it. Spray effect, not super relevant right now. Gap, very important. And lastly, texture. So we're going to cover all of these things. So anti-aliasing, as I talked about last time, if I make a really small canvas, for those of you who weren't here last time, I'll just go over this real quick. So this is without anti-aliasing. And then when I turn on anti-aliasing, the resolution becomes like doubled, pretty much. But you also get like these softened like pixels. So anti-aliasing makes your brush strokes softer. And like never use a paint relief brush in a pixel art style. Oh, one sec. I messed up. No. Oh, okay. I don't know if this is a shortcut for you guys, but I like to do Control Alt and like drag so I can control my brush size that way. So hardness, this is actually exclusive to this brush shape. So to you see me hitting this wrench icon a lot. So these are all the settings for the brush, and obviously if you have a brush without a texture, like if you don't use the texture, you should not have it on. So it's too overwhelming to have every setting on, so that's why you only turn on the ones you need. Okay, so you can click on the eye here to bring it up here, click the eye to hide it. So right now the brush tip is a circle. We'll get to the material in a second because there's a lot of nuance there. So the circle, you can see the brush shape. The hardness controls how soft or hard the circle is. And I think this is actually a really underrated like feature, because it makes this default circle brush like really versatile. So I'll just show you the hardness. We can also talk about the nuances between brush shape and texture in a second, because there's a huge nuance there. So that is hardness. I'll keep it low. Hardness. Thickness is one of my favorite adjustments because it makes your brush, it squishes down all your brush shape. If you do positive thickness, it makes it like this shape. Negative thickness makes it more vertical. And you can see you can tweak it horizontal or vertical. In this case, it does not matter since our brush is a circle, so it doesn't matter what direction it's squished in. And the thickness, how it looks like, I think the moment you add thickness to a brush, it adds so much personality. So just write thickness. So yeah, just makes it like that. Make it like slightly, so like an egg shape. And as you can see, anything with this little box next to it means it can be modified further. So experiment with these. Random thickness is pretty interesting because it adds like pretty interesting texture that like shows up. It's almost like marker, like streaks. Velocity, like yeah, a lot of cool settings all around. But I'm a big fan of this. But I think thickness is not super good unless you can manipulate the angle. So if you tilt it at a 45 degree, then that feels pretty nice. So the angle, the only two or the only three I really use is none, direction of line, or random. These two for me are just too inconsistent. I don't know how to like control the parameters. So when I do none, I actually just adjust the angle here like manually, and I have it bound to like a button so I can like rotate it. So say I'm drawing a box, I like to rotate it like so. I'm gonna draw this line, I'll rotate it like this. And it's like it imitates like you rotating a pencil like in your hand. You know, sometimes you get like a sharp edge that you want to use. So I think brush thickness is super cool. Or yeah, thickness and angle, like the combination of the two. Direction of line, kind of self-explanatory. It always goes like in that like angle, in the direction that the line's heading. So I just write it. But you can see when you go really fine, you have some funny looking things. Like it gets a little crazy. So that's why I don't use this setting very often. I only really use it for straight lines. Okay. Lastly, I'll put this back on none. Random adds really interesting texture, as you can see. It's like barbed wire. So I would recommend doing this conservatively, and I think it's more useful on other brushes than this one. So I like, yeah, it's slightly better, but I probably wouldn't have it on. So thickness, usually I don't have any of these settings on for thickness. I just have it as like a flat thing. So I think by now, like with the combination of brush density, thickness, opacity, and lastly brush shape, with just these 4 parameters, you can make, I think you can make a pretty decent brush that feels nice. So usually, you know, brush size, I would do something like this. Opacity, could have some pen pressure, and the minimum value works the same here. So if I have a minimum value of 0, that means my stroke can be at 0 opacity all the way to 100, right? If I crank it up, it means the stroke will always be at least 50% opaque, and that's the same with density and pretty much anything else here. And I think brush density is a good example of like a parameter you can keep really low and like high at the same time, like have a big variance. You can even, I've done a curve, like a really sharp curve like so before. 1 second. Done something like this before. So when you press light, it's like fairly light, but the moment you press slightly harder, like it just turns completely opaque. So this might be an interesting experiment to use. And lastly, gap. I think gap, for most people, it's like, why would you not want like a small gap? So there's like no breaks in between. But gap is actually pretty important in clip studio, in my opinion, because see, with a 10.1 gap, I can draw this big, but when I actually, no, it's not enough. Oh yeah, infamous lag. I don't know if you guys felt this before, but if you crank up the gap, not high enough. If you crank up the gap, it gets a little bit better, but not really. But like at 40, around 40, I think 50. Okay, now slightly better. So I think gap is like the only parameter that like somewhat allows you to it allows you to kind of bypass the weakness a little bit, like just a little bit. And you can treat gap as like a second brush density modifier. Let's see. Brush density. This. Yeah. So you can get a really painterly brush. Random's also not a bad setting, or not a bad candidate. So that's brush gap. Alright, moving on. I guess lastly we should talk about texture. So I think texture, I'm gonna combine it with brush tip. So usually when you think of like a textured brush, like this texture setting is what you think of first, right? So let's just do like this pattern. Right now you can't see anything because the way the texture is applied. And this menu could be a bit overwhelming to people. All these settings are in relation to the pattern you chose. Okay, so a dark pattern, how do I say it? It's mostly black, so it affects your like brush a lot less. If a pattern is like 50% black, 50% white, something like this, then it'll have a moderate effect. And if a pattern is mostly white, then it will have relatively big effects, but that all depends on the blending mode you chose. So right now the texture mode's normal and is not really doing anything unless I go light, and you can see, maybe I choose a medium color, you can see a little bit of texture. But the moment I do like subtract, subtract, you can see more texture. I think hard mix is another decent one. It's a little more texture. Height. Actually, I honestly don't know what height does. If someone does, let me know. Same with a lot of these things. Just trial and error. So that is texture. The brightness controls the brightness. It means the brightness of this texture. Contrast, same thing. I think emphasize density. Don't really know what. I figured this out a while ago, trying to make like a screen tone brush, but somewhat forgot what emphasize density means. But I will probably remember it later. Let's see. We go back to normal. Unfortunately, if you mess with it too much, you might just wreck what you had. Because right now, like, there's literally nothing showing up anymore. Let's go back to subtract. So each texture, I think, has its ideal blending mode to use. And yeah, that is texture for now. But I'll show you another way to utilize texture. So I have a specific file made for brush making specifically, and I'll show you guys a bit of the setup. So it's a 2048 by 2048 canvas, that square. The important thing is that you want, let's see, canvas property, you want this base expression color to be gray. Because if you have it in color, the color of the brush tip like stays. Oh, sorry, I am not reading comments. Let's see. Andrew asks, can you make the angle random per stroke? Randomize makes every stamp a different angle. I don't think you can make, I don't know if that's a feature right now. Maybe like with a straight line. Snap angle, no. No, probably not. Oh shit, I actually forgot what my brush is. Here it is. Directional pen. Yeah, the random is just meant for the brush shape. It does not do the stroke right now. Maybe they'll add that in the future. Yeah. So, as you can see, these are some of the past brush shapes I've tried to make. So, this time we'll actually just stick with a simple circle. And I'll show you what happens when you add texture to the circle. So let's say we have a circle. One very easy way to generate noise is in filter, render, Perlin noise, and I want a fairly big noise and a fairly high contrast noise. Pretty much the slider, just slide it until it looks nice. That's what I would say. Slide it until it looks nice. Oh, this looks really nice. I'll say, okay. Yep. So, I'm not a mathematician, but noise is... So, in this color, like the color wheel, you see the value from 0 to 1, like from black to white. That could be represented as like a range of a number, right? Like 0 to 1, or like 0 to 225. So a noise is just, think of each pixel as a number, and your screen is just all numbers ranging from 0 to 225. And specific patterns of numbers make up specific noises. And yeah, that's noise. It's just a pattern of numbers, but the visual representation of it. So that's how I would explain it. And what we're gonna do with this is that usually you can hit Control and select, but like let's say I want to select the I want to select the white parts, or I just want to do something with this. So you can go in with a magic wand, but it's not going to be very effective. We're not in Photoshop here, I don't think. Magic wand's powerful enough. So usually I would duplicate this, and there's a nifty feature called File or Edit, Convert Brightness to Opacity. So you hit this. When you hit this, make a black layer. When I fill this with white, you see, actually I created an invert of that. Oh shit. Yeah, I created an invert. 1 second. Invert, oh, invert. Okay. Sorry. Oh yeah. See, I forgot we are in grayscale. Like, there is no color in this world. So what I created is like this white cloud. When I hit Control click, it actually selects all the white on screen. And when I return this noise, you can see they're the exact same thing, but I just extracted the white parts. So convert, I have it bound to like a button here. Convert brightness to opacity. It turns white pixels transparent and black pixels opaque. So when I click it, see the black pixels stayed, white pixels are gone. And anything gray is like semi-transparent. And this way you can create a selection here, come to your circle, mask it out, and now you have a noisy texture or brush tip. And the cool thing is you can even manipulate this image. So I want to increase darks, balance it out like this. If I want to soften the edges, I can go ahead, soften the edges. Like this. And yeah, overall, we have a pretty cool noise here. I know we'll just perform some magic. Anyone has any questions or is confused, let me know. Alright, no problem. After this, what you gotta do is you register the material. Now you can do it this way, or you can do it this way. So you can see these are some of the past brush shapes I've made. And what you can do is rename this, drag and drop into your folder, click this, come to settings, it's interesting, why is it not letting me sorry, I just gotta troubleshoot this real quick. I think it's because I didn't apply it. Okay. So you gotta apply the mask. Applying the mask is just hitting apply mask to layer. And then in here, you just do use for brush tip shape. Click OK. There's also an additional way to find it. It's like if you add a tag, if you click this tag, it will show up, and I'll show you in a second. So back in here, you can take our basic brush, turn the thickness back up. I swear we're going somewhere with this. Material, add brush tip, and now you can find it here, or you can type where you named it right here. That's our brush tip. So now I'm sure y'all have some idea of what's gonna happen. We now replaced our round tip with this new brush tip. And when I turn off, if I have no texture on, you can see even without a texture, my brush has a texture of its own, right? I don't have texture on here. If I turn down like brush density, like I have plenty of texture here. Like that is just quite interesting, isn't it? So the gist of it is that the texture of the brush equals brush shape. And the texture doesn't actually come from the texture. It comes from the brush shape. And if I wanted to add a texture, I can completely do that, and it'll make it even more interesting. But that's not really necessary. And like the foundation is in the brush shape. So definitely try to experiment with a lot of different brush shapes. Since we have a foundation for a brush, actually I should have duplicated the brush earlier. So let's say duplicate it again. Let's squish the angle, or no, squish the thickness. And now it's like, I just made like a pencil brush. Increase density again. Yeah. Actually, I might honestly keep using this brush. it's quite good. So you can experiment with the brush like forever. Let's see. This is where I think random density also super cool. Random brush size, can make it like a patterny kind of brush. Just so we delete the texture. See, with and without a texture, they look pretty similar, but the texture is just kind of something that that's added on at the very end. So, I won't go over dual brush today because that's for another time. I haven't even grasped it fully myself. Show you guys a bit about stabilizations. Someone was talking about it earlier. So stabilization, I'm gonna turn this off. At base, you all know what it does. It makes your line more stable. But at the cost of control. One thing I really like to turn on is this setting. Reduce stabilization when drawing quickly. So even at 100, if I draw really quick, I can make stabilization not affect me. So maybe not 100%, but at lower percentages, I think this is like really helpful. Because like when you're drawing quick, your strokes are pretty like nice anyways. And when you need like to find control, you can have stabilization help you. For most of my brushes, I hover around like 9 to 20. And sharp angles I don't use too often. Post correction, not super needed. Starting and ending, like a lot of these you just have to experiment. I haven't found a really a use for it. Now starting and ending allows you to like starting and ending is part of post correction. Pretty sure. Yeah, you can see post correction like corrects your stroke afterwards, and not something I use. Alright, see you, Ren. I will send you a recording later. Yep. I'll post it on the one club, the community sharing club, or community note sharing club. I'll link it at the very end. Yeah, the rest of these I pretty much do not touch at all. Okay. Do you guys have any requests for brushes that you want to make? Maybe we can approach making a brand new one together. Maybe just turn off this ridiculous setting. I'll list off some examples. So we can either make like saying a marker, pencil, like a kind of like a thick, or like a ink, like flat brush. I don't think I know. I don't have the experience to know how to make like a really good brush pen, because that involves like dual brush. I've also made like a tone brush before. It's pretty cool. Yeah. It's this one. It just adds tone. Like in the, it's like a airbrush like variant. Yeah. So anyone got any requests? Any preferences? I could just go down the list if you guys want to. Alright. I did say I would share some of my favorite brushes. So my favorite marker brush is definitely this one. I've made this like for a while now, and I think it's like it's just a reverse engineered kind of brush I found on the asset store. And so how I would approach brush making. Let me just go back to let me download my own brush, because I overwrote it. Oh, actually it's right here. What am I talking about? I'm re-importing my own brush. So it's a very good idea to have a brush with literally nothing. Okay, like literally nothing, like empty. So you have a blank canvas to work with. I think that's one of the most important things. You don't want, yeah, pretty much the one I gave you. You don't want any parameters that you like forgot that you had on to like that would influence your brush. So that's why I would recommend having everything off. Like the other approach is to just, get brushes from other people and modify them to your own liking. And if you have a brush you really like, you can keep using that as a base. But I would always recommend like understanding like how to make one from scratch. So how to approach so number one, you consider the brush tip shape plus texture. Okay. 2, you recreate the properties. And then 3, texture. Oh yeah, property and probably feel. I guess 4 is like specifics and variations. So these are the 4 steps I would take. Let me just erase this guy real quick. Yep. So since we're going with a marker, first thing we do is make the brush tip, right? We come to our brush make menu. So I am not going to use any pre-existing brushes to make this brush. So I'm assume you're making this from complete scratch. So first I'm going to make a folder. Think a marker is like a square shape, so I'm going to start with a square. And it has like little like notches. So I'm gonna take a triangle, like cut some like notches out like this. That like gives it a unique texture. And a marker tip shouldn't be completely like, it's not completely sharp. So I may want to blur it a bit. But it's also not a brush. Yeah, sorry. Alright, no worries. Thanks for attending. Alright, see ya. Yep, let me just keep making this marker. And yeah, the reason why I put a white background under it is so I can level it. So, level this. See, our shape is sticking shape. And why I talked about brightness opacity earlier, said once you get this, you can get rid of the white like so. And lastly, I think markers do have quite a bit of texture, so once again, make a new layer. Render Perlin noise, relatively big scale, somewhat high amplitude, and this button I made, pretty much what it does. Actually, oh, I had it right the first time. What it does is just inverts the picture, and then this button is brightness opacity. I think I will scale this like so. Come on. So select it, mask this out, and then I level the mask. Oh, not these levels. The mask leveling part is just to control the black and white spots. Let's say I don't want such an obvious white spot in the middle. Can increase the overall, like opacity here. Happy with that. And let's say that's the last thing. I'm doing a mesh transform here. Edit, transform, mesh transformation. Just want this to be like a little bit like wonky. Just playing around here. Oh, that looks pretty good. I think I'm pretty happy with that brush tip. Now you name it. Put in here, marker demo. Click on it. use for brush shape. Come back to this. Make sure to duplicate this so you have the original. And guess when you duplicate, you can see some of these settings. This icon really doesn't matter. You can even make your custom icon. Some of the more important stuff is like output process and input process. There's a bit of a nuance here. If you do create custom subtool, this input process could be important to you. Yeah, there are also a ton of presets. The input process for me, it's important because it determines the icon that it gets used. So under preferences, in cursor, there's different types of tools uses different icons. So like for a pencil tool, I don't like to see the brush shape for a pencil tool. Same with like a pen or like one of these pens. I don't want to see the circle of it. But with a brush, like with this brush for example, I do want to see the circle. So for me, the input process is pretty important. Same with a marker. Since I want to know the direction of the marker, I want to see the shape of the marker. So that's why that nuance is important to me. And since we're making a marker, it's pretty much perfect. So come here, brush tip. First thing you do, you find the brush tip. All right, thanks for attending. 4. Okay, not 4. It's south. Okay, so in my brush approach, we have the tip, the brush tip set. So how do we recreate the property and feel of a marker? So marker is, you have to consider the medium of a marker, right? What is a marker? Medium wise, is it transparent? Medium. Is it like, it is not opaque. It's also variable in like darkness, and it makes fast strokes. Like draws fast strokes. So it also helps if you've used a marker in real life and you know how they're supposed to feel. So the first thing is we want to turn on opacity because we said it's a transparent medium, so it needs some sort of transparency. And we also, I think I'll also turn on brush density, thickness, angle, and also blending modes here. Because one last thing I want to add is like no pen pressure, or like it's got consistent size. So this is where you start experimenting. Okay, what if I turn on opacity? it's okay. It's like not a fan. Okay, like what about brush density? Let's just try the default. So okay, it's like we're getting somewhere. I kind of like this. After that, like, how do I make this feel better? Do I do a curve like so? Okay, that's pretty cool. My bad. Turn that off. Do I do a curve like this? Add some velocity, some randomness. It's feeling nice. I quite like this. Maybe change the thickness. It's a skinnier marker now. Right now I think the gap is too wide, so turn down the gap. Now we're like getting somewhere. I think this feels like marker like the way like the strokes overlap. I like that. I really like that effect. Maybe a little bit of brush size, but a bit of velocity. Like have a really high minimum. And now you get like a tapering effect in the middle. So that feels nice. Maybe a bit, I want to add a little more texture to it. So, but without adding like texture as an overlay. So I'm sure I'll do that. If I do random opacity, that's already a little bit of texture. Like, and this texture is like natural texture. It doesn't feel like an overlay, right? It's like real texture. Maybe a bit of random angle, like 1, 2. Now, like it adds this kind of texture. It's a bit messy, so I'm gonna call that off. Opacity, maybe a little bit of velocity. Now it feels like lighter. You can like flick the marker to like get a really nice like effect. And yeah, pretty much trial and error. You can test it with color, see how you like it. And lastly, specific properties and variations. So if you turn this to multiply, it imitates a marker better in the sense that you can exponentially add to it. But for me, it just feels a little more digital. So actually, I like the normal behavior a little bit more. If I'm doing like if you're washing it, I guess. Yeah, it's cool. I think any of the settings are cool. And yeah, it's just mostly multiply for markers. Maybe, oh yeah, it's on multiply, so. When you're on multiply, it could feel a bit deceptive because it like never, it can always get darker, it feels like, because it can. You can go all the way to black. So use that responsibly. Any questions about making a marker? No questions? Okay, let me make sure all these brushes are here. Alright, I'll make one more brush. I think flat brush is kind of like the same as a marker, so I don't want to repeat that. I'm trying to make, I want to make something I haven't made before. I'm trying to make it like a palette knife, like texture. If I'm approaching this, because I've actually never made palette knife texture. First thing I'm going to do is look at what I'm trying to achieve. So I want something like this, like opaque, but also has a lot of texture to it. Let's see. Yeah, something like this. Don't know if Clip Studio is able to make this, but we'll see. We'll see. I don't think I can do the color stuff, but I think I can make like the base of it. So before I make the brush, I want to answer these questions. I'm kind of approaching this like how I would make a piece of art. So the brush shape and texture, I can see that it's a super thin kind of shape. So thin, rectangular. Also leaves a canvas texture. Property and feel, it's probably something density related. It's an opaque medium. It's also paint related. Yep. In terms of texture, I already said it. It's canvas. Paint. Also a bit of velocity. Special properties. I think one thing is that it's really thin. Okay, with all that in mind, let me make the brush shape. So, let's start with a rectangle. So first experiment I'm going to do is like, just gonna you can approach making brush shapes like how you would make any piece of art, honestly. Like use layers, use everything you got to make the brush shapes, because you're going to be using these for a long time, like ideally, so you may as well put the effort in. You may use masks. It's a transparent mask, like this. I'm not going to cover how to use tone because I did it last time. But I'm going to use a bit of tone. We do like this, like that. Take a soft eraser and just go at it. Stretch it a little bit. So I'm gonna change direction. Okay, let's say that's my combine, merge. I think gotta rasterize that first. No. Can't just. Okay, there we go. Just brushing color back to gray. Changes to use for brush tip back here. Hide that. Put my references here. New layer. Go back. Material. Okay. So right now, this is pretty cool, but it's not a palette knife. Proves the gap. Okay, that's interesting. First thing, one setting at a time. So this is where the horizontal vertical thing comes in handy, since I want to stretch this vertically. I'm sure there's a dual brush method to do this, but I think pen pressure is also important here for once. High minimum, something like this. Angle not important. Passive probably not important, but I'll just have it on. Maybe this could be important. Pretty much you just check all the things that you think could come in handy. Definitely velocity. Just still playing around. I wouldn't go too crazy with this. Wrong way. A little higher. starts lagging so bad. This is why I don't like Clip Studio sometimes. Okay, now we're talking. Like, if I do this, if I do the stroke horizontally, I really like what I'm seeing here. So how do I make this more interesting? First thing first, I think I can randomize the thickness and just go crazy on this. Like, this is like super cool shapes to me. And yeah, honestly, I think I am pretty happy with this. But now it can't really be used upright. So, gotta figure out. I don't think this brush shape is very advantageous for upright, so you're gonna have to think of a different one. Oh. Actually, I don't think continuous spraying was a good idea. This pretty much just if you hold down the button, it continuously sprays. Could be good for some. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about for if you turn on too many settings, you actually forget which one made it like look good in the first place. I think definitely thickness. Brush density. Maybe try random. I want it to like fade to white. Maybe I can double it up. Yeah, I don't think this is it. Thank you. Yeah, I feel like this is where you go back to experiment more. It never ends here. Well, I think personally, I think any brush you make will be really interesting, no matter what, because you made it and it's like uniquely yours. It'll feel like right at home right away compared to like downloading like another brush like from elsewhere. For example, this first brush I made, I think I'm gonna keep using it, to be honest. Same with this one. So yeah, brush making is all just about experimenting and continuous evolutions to a brush, and eventually you find the brush setting you really drive with. Like for me, it's been brush density, and like recently brush gap, and like adding tone as like a texture. Like for example, here I see like the tone looks a bit blocky, so I might sharpen it and make it like drip a lot more. And you can see how a simple purlin noise can just add so much like personality to our brush, especially like for a marker. Like this marker's already got a ton of personality. One more improvement I will make to the marker is that, and this is, masks are also super, it's like stupid clutch here. I might lighten up the center like so. And this goes back to just brainstorming like the brush properties and stuff. So a marker is a water-based medium. So the edges around the tip gets darkened, the middle is like softer. So if you know that property of marker, then you can apply it to the tip, and in turn, actually I'll show you right now. The only problem is you gotta apply it. And actually, before I do, you can even manipulate this. You can do a lot more than this, but I'm just gonna do this quick and dirty. Marker demo 2. Just remember you have to remember to do this or else it won't show up. Hit this, use for brush shape or brush tip shape. And you'd be happy to know that if you just duplicate this brush, underscore marker, you can actually take this. Come on, I hate this. You just replace it, and everything else is kept the same. So you can update your brushes retroactively. And this brush, yeah, it feels a bit more like a real marker now. Like, I like this texture a lot. Let's see, velocity, maybe a little more. Okay. Anyone got any more questions? I'll send this updated brush pack along with the video. Let's see, is there anything else I want to cover? Fortunately, I don't think we'll get to the other ones. Oh shit, if you want, I can include. Actually, the brush shapes are included. Some of the brush shapes we made today. First one. Here. One more thing you can do is actually have multiple brush shapes, like so. Don't exactly know what this does, But right now, I think it just overlaps them together, and you can see. Actually, makes pretty interesting. This is really interesting. It's like a softer marker almost. So this is another way you can experiment with things. Maybe, if I were to remake the palette knife, I'd separate the drippings from the main blade. And this is also what makes like this square canvas useful, because I'm pretty sure, oh, actually this maybe not, not what I intended actually. Okay, Shift C, convert. Sorry, sorry for spamming all these shortcuts. Convert layer, convert. Oh, wait. This is a clever trick I found. It's like if you hit Command A to select all. I know I'm getting like, this is really like specific stuff. But now if you import this, yeah, now it imports the entire like square canvas and not just the brush like area. So when you make, if you want to make like components to a brush that you want to assemble together, like having a consistent like canvas scale you adhere to is more important than you think. Yeah, you see the edges here, they're cropped right up to the tip. Doesn't take into account the whole canvas. All right, any last minute questions? I think I'm gonna call it here. Going once, twice. All right, hope you guys learned something, and yeah, it's been a fun chemo. Hope you guys survived the very last day. Yeah, thank you all for coming. I'll see you guys later.